All right, we're rolling.
Oh no.
Episode 1. I don't even have a title for this yet. I don't
Oh,
know.
let's go.
I don't know what this thing's gonna be called. But all right, starting out, the big burning question that I know several people have been wondering: is it Mulock or Mulock?
Neither.
What?
It. Neither. You're both wrong. It's Mulock.
Mulock.
Yes.
I don't know how I'm gonna change my brain to learn that now.
You know, I was wondering if you were going to start with an introduction, but I think this is even better.
I mean, I've known of you for probably 2.5 years now, something like that.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's always been Mulock, but then I forget who said it, but someone said Mulock. Oh, it was Linz. Linz would always say Jesse Mulock.
Well, him and his British ass don't know what he's talking about.
Oh god. All right, so why don't you do a little introduction of yourself, background, where you came from, how you got into bikes and stuff.
Well, you see, it all started when I was born.
Makes sense.
No, I've been riding and around bikes my whole life. My grandpa raced pro back in the 60s and 70s. My dad rode and raced his whole life. I got my first bike when I was 3. So I've always lived and breathed this sport.
On the
Played all the
P-Dub
games.
gang.
Oh, hell no.
What?
I started off with an XR50.
Oh, fair enough. It's usually one of the two, that or the JR50.
Yeah. I got my first bicycle when I was like a year old, and took training wheels off at like 2 something, and then got a Honda 50 at 3.
You run training wheels on that?
No, I got rid of training wheels before I ever got a motorcycle.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I started on a PW50 when I was 4, and I ran training wheels for probably 3 or 4 months, I think. And of course, that was before I learned how to ride a bicycle.
Well, you see, that's where I did it different. I learned how to ride a bike, and I was doing all kinds of dumb stuff down the street on my little 12, 16-inch bicycle before I ever got a dirt bike. So when I was 5 or 6 on a little Honda 50, I was ripping around the pits making fun of all the little idiots with training wheels.
Nice. So after the after the XR, what'd you move to then?
I got a KX60 or 65 when I was like 7.
Oh, so you stuck on that 50 for a while.
Yeah. I don't know. I guess my dad didn't see a point on moving me up until I was like really ready to actually race.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So I raced for a year or 2 on the Honda 50, and then got a 65 and rode that for a couple years. First, I overrode the Honda 50. I think that's what convinced him to buy me a bigger bike.
You were just banging off the limiter?
No, I collapsed the shock and blew up the forks and made him upgrade to BBR suspension.
Okay, yeah, that'll do it.
Yeah. And then I played around on that for a while, and he must have figured, this kid's ready for a bigger bike.
Yeah, that's definitely fair, for sure.
Yeah, I had the 60 for a while, and then I got a KTM 85.
Ooh, what year?
I I think it was in '07.
Okay, so they were kind of on the back end of tearing them in half.
I never had a problem with my bike.
The front never fell off.
No.
That's good.
So my family's been riding KTM's for a long time and have sworn by KTM since they were Penton back in the 60s.
Well, that's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
So after I had the PW50, I moved to a KTM 50.
Mm-hmm.
Got on the two-stroke, and I rode that for, I want to say, a year and a half, and I got that when I was 5.
Okay.
So first race was in Ascalon in Wisconsin, if anyone knows that track. When I was 5 on Mother's Day, and after that moved up to a KX65, and that's about when I stopped racing as a little kid. So I think my parents thought it was getting too dangerous, but we would still ride. We would still go to tracks every few weeks, but never any racing until I was on a 250.
I don't remember how much I raced when I was on the 65. You know, a decent amount. But when I got on the 80, it was like every other weekend for years until I moved up to the big bike.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's sweet. I wish I was able to do that, but, you know, everything happens for a reason, I suppose.
Yeah. Usually it's just unlucky reasons.
Yeah, true. I mean, I know the 2008 whole housing crisis thing definitely didn't help for a lot of people.
Yeah, my dad is a union construction worker, electrician. So
you guys were pretty much as good as you could be through that.
there was the chunk of the year where he was working all the time, and then the chunk of the year where it was winter and we were riding all the time. So it kind of worked out, and then construction fell apart in the mid 2000s, and he didn't work very much, and then he kept getting hurt, and he really didn't work very much. But I don't know, he must have been good at saving money.
Yeah. And you said you're from Montana?
No.
Oh, you're only living in Montana.
Yeah, I'm from California.
Oh.
As
this is also
unfortunate as
news
that
to
may
me.
be. Man, we've been friends for at least a year.
Well, I mean, I only knew you as living in Montana, so I kind of figured that's where you were from.
I guess that's fair. Yeah, I've been here for 2 years now,
Yeah.
and before that it was all California.
Yeah, true. I mean, I guess I definitely could have just looked up where Fernley's at.
That's in Nevada, so it would have thrown you off too.
Oh, yeah, that would have thrown me for a loop.
Can't make it easy on you.
Yeah. Yeah, you gotta keep me on my toes. Gotta keep me guessing. So the list I've got of things that you've put out for bikes. So starting out with the tracks, Fernley, and then we've got MMX Sand, Wubbajub, Mammoth, and then you stopped building tracks for a little while and you just made bike skins. And then you went back to Fernley, and then finally you released Ernie this year. So how'd you get into track building? Were you playing MXB for a while before that? I don't know, just talk me through that.
Well, I think we all got started back in the old like MTX Mototracks days with the track editor and that.
Oh yeah, that's classic.
Oh yeah. I didn't have a computer to play games back then, so I never got into Unleashed track making or Motocross Madness track making. Just the console games and then Milestone games when they came around.
Yeah.
Spent some time in Sim, played a bunch of Replex when I got a PC for that. Got into modding, or at least playing mods. I played around with track making with both of those, but never really did much. And I don't know, I came over to this game and something just clicked.
Yeah.
So I started making tracks.
So
And
at that time, was the TFC series out, the tutorial series, or was that before
yeah,
that?
yeah, that's been around for a long time.
Oh,
I
okay.
I think at that time there was only like 2 or 3 episodes out that he had made,
Mm-hmm.
and he was still actively doing the tutorials.
Oh, so you're
So
following along.
I got into bikes in like beta 13, beta 14, right within the first like 6 months that it was released on Steam.
Oh,
I've been
I got
following
you.
it for a little while and was just kind of waiting for that to happen because I'd heard rumors it was going to come to Steam,
Mm-hmm.
and then 2020 happened and I had nothing but time and it all went into bikes.
Yeah, kind of same here. Um, yeah, I first got bikes when I was stationed in North Carolina, and
Hmm.
my buddy Tristan, or Pixie669 in game, he was trying to get me to buy a computer for the longest time so we could play MX bikes together, and I was still just on the console. I was playing Xbox at the time,
Yeah.
mainly MXGPs, because in my opinion, MX versus ATV hasn't been good since pretty much Alive. But
Yeah.
of course, Reflex was god tier, and
Man, I've put so many hours into those games.
yeah, same. And dude, when I was on the 360 playing Reflex, I would see videos online of people playing modded tracks, and my little middle school ass would be trying to look through every single menu on Reflex, trying to figure out where these people are getting these stupid tracks that I wanted to play so bad, but I couldn't figure out that they were just on PC.
I didn't even really watch YouTube for stuff like that back in those days. I just played the games or was outside. So I didn't even know about the whole modding scene behind it until way later.
Yeah. Yeah, and then 2020, yeah, 2020, I had bought a computer just to do like MarineNet's online classes and stuff, and I finally got bikes on that computer, and it's not a gaming computer, but I could still run it, and I was running, let's say, Forest at like medium settings at probably 50 frames per second.
Oh man, I remember trying to play bikes when I first got it on my old crapbox computer. And that was at that point there was horrible optimization for AMD cards. Of
Really?
course, I didn't know anything about that. I just had a computer to play games.
Yeah.
What did I know? And trying to play Krakenberg when it first came out at like 9 to 15 FPS. Starting the game and waiting 35 minutes just for it to boot to the main menu. Those were great times.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I still remember
Start up the
that.
game, go make food, come back.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, even on my previous computer, the actual gaming computer, the laptop with the 1660, that would take probably 3 minutes, like 3 whole minutes to boot up Krakenberg.
Well, I don't even know what processor is in it, but the graphics card was an RX 460.
Ooh.
It was rough.
Yeah, and then I played bikes on that basic computer for probably a month, and it took me about a week to get a lap around Forest without crashing. And about 5 days of that was me trying to figure out how to play motocross games on keyboard, and then finding out that you can connect controllers to computers. So it was about day 5 of just grinding that I figured out that I was doing it all wrong.
See, I at least grew up with some computer games, so I had a basic understanding of how a computer worked.
Yeah, that's
But
fair.
I was still so far behind the curve by the time I finally got into it.
Yep. Yeah, and it was
So yeah,
about... Sorry, go ahead.
I got to here and got the game in what, like March when the world fell apart.
Something like that.
Yeah.
I think that's about right.
And I'm looking at the MX Bikes forum, and my first Fernley Sandbox post upload was May of 2020.
Yeah.
I had the game for like a month before I started trying to mod it and make tracks.
See, that's impressive. Not a lot of people like try to start modding that early.
It was definitely not a great track, but
it
was a track.
Decent.
And it was a different time.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, at that time, there wasn't any, like, JVs and Hurrins making absolute masterpieces. I mean, at that time, it was, it was very, very basic. Texturing was super basic. There weren't fancy assets.
Yeah, you had a couple people like TFC or Ruben or Tucko who were putting out, like, really high-quality tracks for the time.
Yeah. Yeah, and those tracks were all classics. I mean, I still love, all those tracks from back then. But, like, if those type of tracks released now, like...
They'd get torn apart, yeah.
Yeah, if Paletta 2020 released right now on mods, it would probably be, at best, like, mid.
Yeah.
Like, nothing against Paletta 2020. But
the game is so much bigger now, and there's so many more, I don't know, kids.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, especially, like, Paletta V2. I mean, arguably one of the most, probably most played tracks of all time.
Yeah.
At least modded tracks, that is. I don't think that would stand a chance today.
Yeah, it was like Paletta V2, Thursday Night Motocross.
Oh, yeah.
What was it, like Hillside or something, I think?
Hillside Compound? I think that's what it was called.
I don't even know anymore.
But I mean, we got the idea though. Like those type of tracks.
There are some really good tracks from that time that are completely forgotten now.
Yeah. Yeah, but I mean, even still, like there wasn't any Rezo track builder tool back then, and I think that is probably the one thing that completely changed the game and brought so many people into modding, at least for tracks. Because I tried making a track before, I think it was like a month before the tool came out. I tried making Sunset Ridge. It's a track in Illinois, also known as Walnut.
Walnut.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and this was a week before Walnut released. Anyway, shout out to Muppet.
Mm-hmm.
Which, I mean, it's a good thing that I didn't end up making it anyway, because what he did was absolutely historical. I mean, another one of the biggest tracks of all time.
Yeah, looking at it now, my first 3 tracks were before Rezo's track helper tool.
Yeah. Yeah, and I tried building that track for probably 3 days solid. Because we were on quarantine over in Okinawa, Japan, And I was super bored, and I'm like, you know what? I want to get into track building. And at that point, the TFC method was all that existed. So I put in about 3 8-hour days in a row, just trying to get something going. And the furthest I got was a height map with the Google Earth image. And
Right.
once I actually got to L3DT, I completely just couldn't figure it out. I couldn't figure out the controls. I couldn't figure out how to build the track anymore because some file got screwed up and there was no way for me to figure out what it actually was. So I gave up after like 3 days.
Yeah, I can see that. When you barely know what you're doing, it's easy to get discouraged when something completely out of your comprehension goes wrong.
Yeah, especially not having any support groups. Like, there was no Earthworks at the time. I didn't know a single track creator. All I was going off of at all was the TFC series.
Yeah, there was whatever you could find on the forums, or what little help you could get in the main Bikes Discord if somebody was actually there.
Yeah.
A lot of people then they talked about certain things and completely ignored others. It was weird.
Yeah, no, we're super fortunate now with everything we have. I mean, even being able to reach Paboso if you really need to.
Yeah,
For the
for
extenuating circumstances.
whatever good you can get out of that, he is sometimes there.
Yeah. Yeah, and pretty much
So,
for
yeah.
anything, for any normal question, there's gonna be someone lower than Paboso that knows.
Mm-hmm.
But it's those burning questions like can we respawn in the direction of the track instead of respawning backwards after a crash?
That's such a weird thing.
Yeah.
Like, you have some people that fixate on that so much. It has to just be horrible luck on their part that they always respawn wherever they do.
Well, I mean,
Played the game for so long now, and it's like a coin toss. Either I am facing forwards or I'm facing backwards. It doesn't really matter. You just push for a second and get going again.
Yeah. I mean, I've got just shy of 2,000 hours in the game. I think I'm at 1970,
Man.
and I can definitely say with certainty that over the past 2,000 hours of playing, I'd say 99% of the time I'd respawn backwards. I don't know why. I don't know if it's luck or if that's just the way the game is. Like, I know Paboso said, like, oh, I think you should be penalized for crashing. And that's his way of penalizing crashing. But I don't know if that's actually coded into the game engine to where you would respawn backwards, or if everyone's luck really just isn't on their side.
I mean, if you're spamming the reset button as you're crashing, who knows where you're going to respawn? You're tumbling through the air. If you wait till your bike settles on the ground and hit respawn, you're going to pick up facing whatever direction your bike's facing.
Yeah.
It's...
I mean, I couldn't tell you how many times, like... Sorry, what?
A lot of it has to come down to impatience. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I could be wrong, but a lot of the times it does seem like even if you do wait for your bike to settle on the ground, there's a lot of times where it should sit where it's at, and then out of nowhere it just does a 360 no-scope 180 and just turns itself backwards after it's already settled. I'm sure everyone's been there before. I know I'm not the only one.
Yeah.
But let's move on to some other things. So,
See, I started with tracks. Of course, I had to make Fernley. Like I said, I grew up in California, but my dad didn't like tracks in our area. And we have a big history in Northern Nevada, like family and friends, clubs and everything. So I grew up mainly racing in Nevada at the Fernley Sandbox. So I've put easily more laps in to that little litter box than anywhere else that I've been. I had to make it for the game.
Oh yeah.
I think that's what a lot of people do when they get into track making. They either make a track that means something to them, like they're like their local track, or some track they saw that they wish they could ride, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, like I said, I tried starting with Sunset Ridge or Walnut, and that was one of the tracks I grew up riding. And I just felt like it would have the best flow for the game out of all the tracks I would grow up on.
Yeah.
And, of course, that didn't work out. And, you know, like I said, a week after trying and giving up, Muppet released it, so, you know, what was the point then, especially with how big of a hit it was. But then my first track I did release was Tampa, and ever since I've lived in Florida since 2021, I want to say I've been to Tampa around 70 times.
Jeez.
And behind that is, I think it's tied between Dade City and Moto Bros at 3 times each. No, I'd say I've been to Dade City 4 or 5 times, Moto Bros 3 times, Spider MX once.
Yeah.
I haven't really branched out since I've lived here, but, I mean, Tampa, obviously, vast majority of my riding down here in Florida, so I made that. After that, I went to Sky's the Limit, and that one is obviously just a fantasy track. And I don't know if you remember any of the layout of Sky's the Limit, but the big flat-out fifth gear pinned whoop section, that was actually the exact whoop section from the example track from the, you know, track building files.
Yeah.
Because I just took the example track height map and I just screwed around with that until I found something that I liked, and I threw the scale way up from, I think the example track's at 5 meters, and I think Sky's the Limit was 20 maybe. So that was just 4 times the size of the normal example track whoops.
Oh man.
But
that's brutal.
Yeah. Yeah, so that one, obviously fantasy track, and then I went to Tomahawk, and I rode Tomahawk twice in 2019. No, sorry, 2020. And I had borrowed a bike from a friend, and the first time I rode there, it was good. It was my first time riding in probably 4 years, because I was 4 years into the Marine Corps.
Yeah.
And then my second time riding there, the big 100-foot table, I cased it, and I knew I was going to case it early, so I preloaded as hard as I could, and front end went way up, and with me not having any of the muscle memory anymore, I brake tapped, but didn't use clutch, so I killed it over this 100-footer. The front end's still way high, and I just cased the life out of that jump. So I ended up breaking my ankle, my left ankle. Yeah, I mean, that's the whole story about Tomahawk. And then after that was Vetomex Compound, which that's another fantasy track. 2022 Tampa, and that was because the first Tampa I did, I mean, no one's gonna argue that it wasn't dog water. I didn't know what I was doing, and at this point where I made 2022 Tampa, I knew a little bit what I was doing, so I wanted to do it some justice.
Yeah, I feel that. My first track was Fernley, and then a couple years ago, when I got up here to Montana after basic and tech school, I got my computer set up, and there was all kinds of talk at the time about what was going to happen to Fernley, if it was going to even exist anymore. So I set out to make an updated Fernley with as much stuff as I could possibly fit on there. And that was at least a 6-month project.
Yeah.
And geez, what did that track end up being? There was 2 motocross tracks, 2 different GP loops, forward and backward. There was some makeshift imagination stuff on one side to fill in some empty height map, and on the other side I put in both the turn track whoop desert trail stuff that's between the track and the cemetery. Tried to recreate the whole mountain range that surrounds the town for the background. I went deep into that.
Yeah, and that was a
Like,
banger.
I know a lot more at that point than I did in 2020 making the first version or any of the other tracks before it.
Yeah, and it
So
definitely
that was
paid off.
definitely a passion project.
Yeah, that one was a lot of fun. I will give you that.
Thank you.
I will admit,
And-
though, when I was cleaning out space from my last PC, I think I only kept 2 of the PKZs. 2 of the tracks.
Yeah, I wish I could have optimized it, condensed it down better. But each track and each layout was, different textures or slightly different height map or different objects or something. So it ended up being 6 different tracks, basically.
Yeah. Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
well.
There's nothing wrong with that as long as they're unique.
And actually, this year, somebody new bought the property that Fernley is on and is planning to rebuild the track, and it should be up and running by next year. So,
Oh, that's awesome.
oh yeah, 2024 Fernley coming to MX Bikes.
Let's go. Yeah, I love hearing about tracks opening back up because, I mean, there's way too many closing lately.
Yeah, and it was a whole bunch of drama around it. It was, people fighting over what the actual property lines were, people coming in and pretending to buy it, but being super sketchy or shady about things, and just bringing a bad name in the city. Ended up closing it down pretty much to get everybody's heads back on their shoulders and figure out what was actually going on.
Yeah. Yeah, the same thing happened with KI tracks. So that track closed, I forget exactly what year. It was either 2017, 18, or 19. No, I think it was 2017. I could be wrong. I have the correct year on the KI tracks release post on mods. But anyway, that's been closed for a few years, and within, I think, a month of posting KI tracks, because that's another one that I grew up riding, within a month of posting it on mods, Brett Q had made an Instagram post at KI tracks, and that hasn't been a track for years. It was completely flattened, grown over, the property was sold. But Brett Q had posted a video of him hitting a few booters over there, and they had completely started rebuilding a whole new track, and I want to say it's supposed to open this year.
Yeah.
So, I mean, big dubs there. I'm super happy to see that. I would love to go back to Illinois and ride that.
Oh yeah, it's never fun when the tracks that you grew up on disappear.
Yeah, and a lot of them happen out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Like, you see a lot of posts where it's like, even if it's a track you've never been to, you'll see the shared Facebook post or whatever where it's like, oh, it's with Heavy Hearts that effective immediately the track is now closed. Like, whatever track that might be.
Yeah.
Like, thanks for all the good years, and it's always being sold to builders for housing developments, and
Yeah.
I cannot stand that.
That's that's one saving grace with the Fernley track is it's right next to a cemetery. It's on the other side of the highway from the actual town. And ultimately it's a pretty small town, and that's one of the biggest attractions that it has that brings people through. Other than that, there's like a couple truck stops and a Walmart.
Yeah, yeah, and that's the other
But when
thing that
people
I
come to
don't get.
town for the races or practices or to ride or whatever, it always brings, hundreds of people into a weekend
Yeah,
and blows up the economy for a little bit.
yeah, yeah, and like KI Tracks, that's in Oregon, Illinois. Super,
Hmm.
super small town. I mean, tiny town in the middle of cornfields, for miles and miles and miles in each direction. And any given weekend, there would be, I'd say, probably 100 riders per day. And then about 20 minutes away from there is Byron, which is another track that I don't know if the track creator wants to be named, but someone made it and
Hmm.
has been sitting on it for about a year and a half, 2 years now, and it's making me very, very upset. And I wish he would just release it because I have ridden it and it's very, very, very good. And
Is
I
it
would have loved to.
somebody that we know, one of our mutuals?
It is.
Oh, what a prick.
Yeah, we'll talk about that after the podcast. But yeah, Byron. It's an area qualifier. That track never closed. So I mean, I don't know
Hmm.
why I'm complaining about this, but that's in a small town too, and that's an area qualifier pretty much every year for the last, I don't even know how many years. But for a tiny town that's probably got a couple gas stations, maybe a small locally owned grocery store, to have thousands of people come to race for a weekend,
Yeah, it does wonders.
yeah, that probably brings in the same amount of revenue that the rest of the year brings in combined, just to the city.
Yeah.
But all right, moving on from tracks. So one of your probably biggest involvements, I mean, as far as I know, in the last couple years, is being part of the OEM team. So,
Yeah.
so do you want to talk about what exactly you did with the OEM team, where it's at right now, and things like that?
Oh man. Well, I'm sure everybody knows by now that I'm the guy to point fingers at when something goes wrong with the bikes. Because for the last year or so, I've taken over the physics department. After, anybody who's been around for a long time knows the impacts of old, Beta 17 and older. That
Yeah.
was pretty much insane, Green Linux, and Azrael. And Azrael has been less and less involved with the game as the years went by, and eventually just took his part. And props to him. Go enjoy your life.
Yeah.
And the bikes were largely unchanged for a handful of betas. Like in the old pack, the Husky and Gas were 100% clones. You know.
And wasn't it the same with a few other bikes too? Like, I want to say the
Um,
Yamaha and Honda 250s were the same.
a lot of the bikes were very similar,
Uh-huh. Maybe a
but
couple
those,
characteristics or
yeah, the
clickers or whatever.
Yamaha and Fantic were clones. The Husky and Gas were clones, and all of the bikes were still somewhat different, but just the way that they were made at the time and the amount of knowledge that was there, they were all still very samey.
Yeah.
And there was, oh man, the beginning of last year, I think it was. Asriel was just totally out, and Insane was kind of trying to figure out what to do with the OEM pack. And I threw up my hands and said that I'll see what I can do, learn bike ed and physics, and
Yeah, and I've
we'll
heard
see what
wonderful
happens.
stories about bike ed. I've heard that's just a walk in the
Oh,
park.
it is just the most amazing program ever designed. Oh God.
So
So yeah,
how long did you have to learn bike ed before you were in, I guess, like full force production mode with the new OEMs?
so I basically started working with the OEM crew in like January or February last year.
Mm-hmm.
So not long after I released Fernley
Oh
the
wow!
second time. Yeah.
I had no idea it was that long.
So the big Fernley pack was 2021 December
Yeah.
release.
Oh
And
okay.
then I started working on OEM stuff in like January, February.
So it was about a year.
Yeah. I don't think the first like real bike that I had came out until May or June. I started with either the YZ 125 or 252 stroke.
Yeah.
One of one of one of those that everybody kind of had complaints about how the two strokes felt, and I'm a two stroke guy, so I figured why not? I'll start with that. This is what I know.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the
And
two strokes definitely felt a bit sluggish before the new OEM pack.
they were very much four strokes with a different sound mod.
Yeah, they almost
Effectively,
felt
that's what they were.
like 125 four-stroke pit bikes with two-stroke sound mod.
But there was a lot of research and work that went into that first bike, trying to figure out how all the programs work, how the different files work, figuring out how to get through all of the forums and the various amounts of information split between Asdriel's posts on the MX Bikes forums or random other posts on GP Paboso forums, talking to whoever I could find in the community that had any clue what was going on. And after a while, I had one bike that seemed to be getting somewhere, and it just kind of kept building and building over the year into like the end of summer, and then it was like, oh hey, we're gonna make all the bikes in this new way. And it was like non-stop work for the latter half of the year
Yeah.
between me, Zonta from GP Bikes was brought in pretty early. He was giving all kinds of information, helping work on bikes. The OEM crew itself grew exponentially. You know, there's me, Insane, and Green Lennox, and we brought on Frankie, and eventually Phantom, and you know, a handful of texture guys, a handful of testing guys, and now we have, I don't know, like 25 or 30 people all together between whoever's
Whoa.
working on it and whoever's testing it.
Oh man, I had no idea there was that big of an operation. I thought it was like a maybe 6 or 7 person gig.
We have a lot of people involved with it now. There's 3 or 4 guys that do modeling, 3 or 4 guys that do texturing. A couple of us do physics stuff. Insane does his imports and various MX Bikes wizardry.
Yeah.
And yeah, there's like 15 people or that are or just testers.
Yeah, yeah, that's so cool. Yeah, I mean, the OEM bikes have. How long have OEM bikes been a thing? Like, when was the first pack brought up? Do you know?
I've seen bikes from a long time ago. I don't know when the first OEM pack was, but I think the oldest that I've seen was Beta 9.
Yeah, yeah, because the very early betas, like when it was pretty much practice track and maybe a couple more, I don't really remember seeing any bikes that weren't the Pabobo. Geez, I can't even figure out. I
Well,
can't remember what that bike's called.
the MSM.
MSM.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, at that time, the game was a lot smaller and a lot different. There
Oh, it was
was
super niche
the
too.
first like 10 betas that came out. It was a coin toss whether or not you had to start from scratch when a new beta came out. So there is a handful of mods from long before I was around that just don't exist
They just do
anymore.
not compute.
They're just they're not compatible with the game, etc.
That might be a cool rabbit hole to just like research, like see what kind of tracks were out, like see if there were bangers before, you know, the modern age kind of came about. Like if there's any cool tracks that either exist today in a different form.
Well, there's a lot of stuff hidden in the forums that I bet 90% of the community anymore doesn't even know about. I'm sure there's a lot of people that don't even know there is a forum.
Oh yeah, I guarantee it. I mean, at this day and age, you really don't need the forum.
Yeah, everything is on MXB mods.
Yeah, and all
Or
the
the shop.
information side of thing, all the information
There is still
side of
so
things, yeah.
much information on the forums that's not available anywhere else.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, really, all I use the forums for is, well, when I bought this new computer, I had to re-download the track tools.
That's really, and that's not from the forums either. A lot of that you can get from the MX Bikes website.
Yeah, yeah, and from the forum, that's where the link takes you, is the MX Bikes website.
Yeah. If you get the standalone version of the game from Paboso's websites, you can go back through and play old betas.
That would be really cool to try.
You can't do that through the Steam version, but you can do that through the standalone.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I want to try that. Like, it would be cool to see where we came from and see how far the game's come. Because I know at a certain point, like, whipping just wasn't a thing.
Oh yeah, I remember seeing videos of like beta 9, 10, 11 from, you know, Start Your Systems or whoever else at the time, and the game was so different.
Oh yeah. Yeah, everything about it, the sound, the physics, you know, just the way the models worked. Like what I mean by that is like the way the rider model moved.
Yeah, everything was, the whole game was different so many times.
But then the one thing that's just never changed is the menus.
Yeah, pretty much.
You've still got that chime whenever you hover over a selection or click anything, the ching.
Hey, I love that menu sound. It brings me back to the Motocross Madness days.
Oh yeah. Yeah, no, I'll never do that delete, like the mute menu mod or whatever there was.
Yeah. One of these days I'll add some menu music to it just because I can, but oh well. So yeah, the last year and a half has pretty much been OEM for me. And
Yeah.
somehow in the middle of it, I also found time to finish up Erne. I started that like a month after I released Fernley. So I was kind of working on that all year along with working on OEM stuff. And I was working on aerial tracks at the same time.
Oh, so you were on the aerial team.
Yeah, 22.
Yeah.
I got in with Stony and Denner, and we did the Supercross series. I did all the race data stuff, cams, pits, race data, all the fun, boring stuff that nobody likes to do on tracks. And outdoors came along. I don't even know how we managed to pull that off. I was so lucky with my schedule at work. I can't tell you how many times I pulled all-nighters working on aerial tracks just to get them ready the next day.
Man. Yeah, that's insane. I still remember when that series was ongoing, and there would be tracks that were delayed by maybe a day or two, and everyone in the community would just blow up. Like, just complaining about, like, oh, well, why can't we have the track today? It just doesn't make sense.
There was so many days where qualifying would start at 12 o'clock or whatever, and we were still working on the track at 11:30. Like, I'm sorry, guys, it's not happening.
Yeah.
We had issues with object guys at the time, and I ended up using whatever assets that we had available and doing all of the Blender stuff for a lot of the outdoor series last year, and doing the race data while Stoney made the tracks.
Yeah, there would definitely be a
very
point
hectic.
if that was me and I was working on tracks like endlessly, like all day, every day, and then logging into, let's say, the MX Bikes Discord and seeing everyone complaining. Like, I don't know how I'd be able to just keep going.
That's been my last year and a half of bikes, is working my ass off for mods and opening up Discord to see whatever hate crimes people want to spew at me.
Yeah, and the MX Bikes Facebook page isn't any better.
Oh my god.
If anything, that's probably worse.
That Facebook page is unreal.
It's literally a combination of people complaining about anything that they could think of complaining about, and people going, hey, what times are you guys running on Forest?
Yeah, if it's not hating on something, it's obsessing about how fast you can ride around a stock track.
Yeah.
Hey, where's that 49 seconds on TNMX? I remember when that was like the big meme.
Oh yeah. So then you also had the YouTube tutorials. Was it just the one tutorial on Trackhead?
Yeah, I just did the one. I think I did that in the middle of Supercross last year. And there was a period of time where so many tracks were coming out with busted up race data and broken laps and cuts, all that. So
Yeah.
I just sat down while I was making one of the Supercross tracks and went through the whole process of everything.
Yeah.
And I hope it helped people.
I mean, it sure helped me.
Like, all of my tracks up to that point I had made with the information on the forums or TFC's tutorials, Nico's tutorials, trying to understand them in French because only a couple of them were actually in English, and none of them had captions, so it was auto-translate and broken.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean,
The first time you try to make a skybox with his French tutorial is a come to Jesus moment.
I mean, like I was saying in Earthworks a couple days ago, even I think I've made 4 skyboxes now, and each time I have to follow along. Even on the 4th time doing it, it's still a come to Jesus moment. like nothing against Miko. Miko's done, you know, he's definitely one of the, I'd say, biggest longtime creators, just all around. You know, he's kind of done it all type of things.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, utmost respect for that guy. But the French tutorials, it just doesn't super resonate with trying to figure it out, you know.
Yeah, I did the same thing for the first few tracks, and I think it was like Mammoth or Wubbajub. I came to my senses and made a Sky Dome object in Blender and just retextured it, so I would just always have something I could refer back to without having to go and decipher his French again.
Yeah. Yeah, I think if there's one tutorial we as a community need, it's definitely a Skybox tutorial.
Oh. At the least, just proper English captions for that tutorial would be nice.
I'd say either English or in GIMP, because I know a lot of people use GIMP, a lot of people don't use Photoshop, including me.
Yeah, same. I haven't used Photoshop since I was in college.
Yeah.
And I've been using GIMP. I got Affinity and used it for Fernley a little bit and haven't really touched it since because I haven't really made a track since.
Yeah, that's fair.
The most that I've used GIMP for in the last year was translating dinos.
What could you have possibly done with dinos on GIMP?
I have a sheet, which is like a big chart. So it's got RPMs on the bottom and then horsepower on the side. And I line up all the dinos and scale it so they're all relatively the same.
I guess that kind of makes sense.
So I have a reference to use when I'm making bike engines and stuff.
Although I guess I also have no idea how BikeEd works, so I mean, it could very well just not make any sense to me.
So there are engine files, which are like each dyno for the bike.
Uh-huh.
And each one of those, you basically have an RPM and a torque number. So what I do is I lay out the dyno on a chart in GIMP, so it scales correctly. So 2,000 RPM is 2,000 RPM, and 10,000 is 10,000. 60 horse is 60 horse, and then the line falls out wherever it falls, and then I look every 500 RPM and grab a point and slap it into my converter to get it to the right units for the game and plug it into the engine file.
Oh, okay.
So
that makes a little more sense.
Yeah, having that background in GIMP, I can put all of the dynos onto there and get them all scaled up like equally, and then it gives you a more fair representation of what you're looking at.
Yeah, I'm sure even with what you just told me, if I tried to go and do that, I would be completely lost, but it does make a little bit more sense than if you just say, like, yeah, I'm building dyno sheets with GIMP.
Yeah. There was a period of time where I translated it over to an Excel sheet and all of the numbers spit out a dyno chart. That was fun.
Oh, like it actually worked?
Yeah, like it would take the number, the power output, and the RPM, and it would make a line graph.
Yeah, that's pretty neat. There's a lot I don't know about Excel, but...
Yeah, it didn't really account to anything in the end, because we didn't share any of the images that we made, but It was fun to look at.
That's useful.
And you could see, every dyno for every bike and compare it to each other with like 2 clicks.
Yeah. So I guess the last question I have, because we've been going on for about an hour. So.
And you wanted to do 30 minutes, oh boy.
Yeah, I mean, I thought 30 minutes was going to
maybe the next guy.
Yeah. But the last big question that I have that I've been wondering about ever since this became a thing is, what is your opinion on the factory bikes?
Oh god, do I really need to answer this? Let's see. My politically correct answer, which is still, my honest answer to this whole topic. Anybody who sits down and takes the time to make a whole new bike for this game, hats off to them. There's so much shit and so much absolute nonsense that goes into this game and trying to make things work. Go for it.
Yeah.
Like, I may not prefer those bikes, they may not tickle my fancy, but that shouldn't stop anybody else from enjoying whatever content that they want to enjoy.
Right, yeah, and that makes sense. And yeah, I forget the actual saying, but competition breeds, you know the thing.
Yeah.
I think it's competition breeds perfection, or, growth.
Whatever it is.
Yeah, whatever the thing is.
I get what you're trying to say.
Yeah, so I mean, there's definitely a positive component to it. I could definitely see where you and the other OEM guys could have a little bit of negative thoughts, I guess you could say.
I mean, there is a lot behind the scenes with all of that.
Oh, I guarantee it.
It's not my place to spill everybody's tea.
Oh, 100%.
So...
Yeah, and I figured there was some behind-the-scenes stuff, probably some private Discord conversations. And obviously I wouldn't want to get into that. I don't want to become a drama channel.
Yeah. Especially not with your first video.
Yeah, especially not with my first video, especially not with such a small tight-knit community. Last thing I want to do is stir up some stuff that's, pretty much been, at least on the surface level, pretty much covered for the last couple months.
Yeah. I think the biggest issue with the factory bikes is the chunk of the community that just picks a side and then fights with the other one. Like, yeah. Obviously there's going to be kids that do whatever they do, but at the end of the day, we're all trying to mod the game and get the best experience that we want to have out of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'll be the first to admit that I don't know everything that there is to know about this game or making bikes, but I'll be damned if I'm not trying, if I'm not updating and working on bikes constantly to try to get a better product out.
Yeah.
And the hatred that people just blindly share since the factory bikes have come out, either way, is just stupid.
Yeah, and I think it's a lot easier for people to hate on, whatever it is, whether it's a certain track or a certain bike or, the way any mod is, it's way easier for someone to hate on it if they've never made anything for the game.
Yeah, look at Lynn's and the track reviews that he would do before and after he made his track. There is a completely different mindset and outlook with how he judges a track and what goes into it and what he's willing to accept and let go.
Oh, yeah.
Now that he's made one. If anybody were to try and make a bike, I'm sure they would fall into that same boat.
Oh, I would 1,000% fall into that same boat. I mean, even the broken bikes that have come out in the past, that it would be like one single bike. I'm not gonna name any names because I don't want to be calling people out and saying their mods are broken, but yeah, like there's been plenty of bikes that have come out that you ride once and you're like, oh well, this doesn't work at all. Like either the physics are way off, the bike, weighs 1,000 pounds and pushes 15 horsepower, or it just looks like garbage or sounds like garbage.
There's so many different aspects that go into making a bike, whether it's visual with the graphics or modeling or scaling, or it's trying to figure out how the engine dynos works with gearing and everything, or the suspension or the inertia, or how virtual rider works with the bike, how weights and distribution, it all goes together, and there's so much scarcity of knowledge, even with as much as there is on the forums, that the fact that anybody can make a bike work in this game is impressive on its own.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I did spend like maybe 2 hours trying to figure out how to make a bike. And I started out, I don't know why I started with this, but I started with tires.
Yeah, I get that. That was my first big jump into the OEM. Like, I was working on bikes and stuff on my own, and got to a point where the tires were just lacking, especially with the Beta 17 update.
Yeah.
The tires just fell to shit.
Yeah, which, I mean, tires is one thing we've come such a long way with. Like, the tires that we've got now, like the sands, the mid-softs, the mediums, like, they're all so good in their own ways.
Yeah, and there's always trying to battle the meta issue. No matter what it is, whether it's bikes or tires or tracks or anything, somebody's going to find the one particular setup that gets them to be that much faster, and then everyone's going to use it. Which, like, it's cool, but it hurts that nothing else gets used.
Yeah.
But I remember how one of the few times that everybody in the community kind of came together and was like, holy shit, this is awesome, is when the OEM initial tire release happened.
Yeah,
and you could actually ride tracks again. You could ride sand, you could ride soil. Compact is a lost cause. We don't talk about compact soil.
I mean, compact soil is good for straightaways that you don't want to get rutted up, but other than that...
Well, it's just so slippery. It's like riding on ice.
Yeah.
Like, it's arguably worse than riding on asphalt in this game. It's silly.
Yeah,
Go on.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I can't remember a time where I've used compact soil in one of my tracks.
Well, I have used it in a few tracks. I know you experienced some of that when you were playing Wubba recently.
Yeah, that one
track
is
has
super
everything
slippery.
on it. I'm pretty sure most of it is normal soil. And it deforms into compact in places, or soft soil in places, or whatever. Fernley also uses everything.
See,
It's
that one
a sand track.
about.
It is a sand track, but there's a hard base in real life. So I kind of emulated that with material layers. So as you deform, you'll go from sand to soft or normal or compact soil, depending on where you are in the track and how deep you've dug into the terrain. So it is a ever-changing course if you give it the time to deform.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the other thing, Wubba, that is one of, like, my all-time favorite early tracks. Well,
That track
and
is
MMX Sand.
so silly, too.
Both of those tracks, I don't know why, I just absolutely loved them back in the day. Those got so much playtime.
Yeah, MMX Sand was special too, because that was like one of my first times riding in a few years at that point.
Yeah.
Like, I'd moved away from home got married and all of that, and didn't have a truck and didn't have a bike. So I went home for vacation one weekend and got to go ride and went there. I was like, yo, this would be awesome. And I think I threw that track together in like a month.
Yeah. Yeah, and
Blubberjub is silly. Somebody came to me with wanting to import a sim track, and I had nothing else to do. And I was like, sure. So that was a hype map given to me from somebody between the two communities. And I put in all of the other work to make it an MX Bikes track.
Yeah. Yeah, that track flowed so good on the CR500 back in OEM 17, I want to say. OEM 16, I think it was.
Yeah.
And then MMX Sand, there was the one, there was this huge gap that you could do in the back section. So there's the I want to say the back right corner. You would start off the right side of the track, like next to the side of the height map. And you would skip the jumps. I think it's like 1 or 2 tabletops coming up to that 90 left.
Yeah.
And the 90 left is where the big tree is. And you would come along, and there's the hip jump right in the corner. You would hit that 5th pinned on a 450 and downside the next double after that one. I think that's how the section went. I'll definitely put it on screen for the video.
I don't know, I think after this we might need to just go have a session playing through old tracks.
Yeah, I'll be down for that. But yeah, that was one of the first like big lines I ever found. Because for about a year, that's pretty much all I was doing. I was trying to set world records for backflips and stuff, which I mean, there's never really been a defined backflip like community or freestyle community.
Yeah, there's just the weird wheelie weirdo bike life crew. That's about it.
Yeah.
I mean, now there's a whole freeride scene, but definitely not a couple years ago.
Yeah. Yeah, and I still think I have the, I guess, as official as you can call it, world record for the most I was about to say consensual. Consecutive backflips in one single jump, and that's at 6. So sextuple backflip.
Sometimes you can do that just hitting a tough block on a supercross track.
Yeah. Yeah, I would put in there the world's first on-purpose sextuple backflip. And that was on the freestyle track. Was it Fluffy Gecko?
Oh, Jesus. I don't even know.
The one that made the freestyle ramps.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that was Fluffy Gecko.
What track was that? I think Fluffy Gecko was the creator, not the track.
Well, no, yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, it was one of Fluffy. Oh, jeez. It was one of his tracks. It was the freestyle place. It had the half pipe section.
Yeah.
With the sticks to show how high you were going or something along those lines. But yeah, it was at that place on the CR500. That was super cool. I forgot how we got on that topic.
You were talking about big lines at MMX.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, so I got into just backflipping everything and trying to find big lines on any track that I could.
Was it... No, it wasn't that. I don't know. Acreage? Was that it?
No, but I've put in so much time into Acreage.
Because that was definitely one of those earlier humongous compound freeride areas.
And the time that I found Acreage, it had already been out for a long time. Oh, it was FMX Test Track. That's what it
Mm.
was. Yeah. I've been trying to go back to a lot of the old tracks lately and just, try to remember the good old days when everything was just simpler. The tracks were simpler. Riding online with people was simpler. It wasn't
Oh,
like going into public lobbies and then you would just get haunted off the side of the track.
I remember there was a time when you were lucky to get into a server without the game crashing 7 times.
Yeah, yeah, that was.
Now we only have one game crash per load in.
I mean, the whole game crashing thing, that was only the last beta. That's a fairly new thing to where you're not crashing every time you're trying to go into the lobby.
Yeah. From what I've heard, GP Bikes is every bit as bad as what we used to have.
I bought GP Bikes when it first hit Steam, and I grinded that out for about a week or two, and
There's no way GP Bikes is on Steam.
it sure is. But yeah, I grinded that out for about a week or two and tried playing online. And the problem there isn't like one big OEM pack or like one main bike pack. There's so many different packs of bikes, and like you'll see servers to where they only have like one little pack or one bike selected, and there's the stock bike that comes with the game. It's pretty much an MSM, but it's a
Yeah.
600 Super Sport.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't think GP Bikes was on Steam. It's not. Kart racing is. Of all games, MX Bikes and KRP.
No, GP Bikes is in fact. Yeah, it's on Steam.
I don't know. I'm
Looking
looking
at it right
Rosa's
now.
page right now.
Yeah, I've got 12.6 hours. Last played January 1st.
Why is it not? Why did it not come up under Paboso then? What on earth?
I would just type in GP Bikes.
I did. That's so weird. Why did it not come up on when I was looking at Paboso?
Here, I'll send it to you over Discord.
Wow, KRP was on Steam in 2017. That's silly.
Yeah, MX Bikes is not Pabobos, baby.
Oh, I know he has 4 games.
Yeah.
I just didn't realize that the other ones were on Steam.
I didn't know any other ones were on Steam. I thought it was just GP Bikes and MX Bikes. And it's hilarious. MX Bikes is arguably the one that he cares least about, at least from what I've heard. And that's by far, by a landslide, the biggest game he has.
Oh, it's his gold mine, and he just refuses to do anything with it. It's weird. Like, I understand from his perspective as a developer, he wants to have all of his projects kind of built up evenly. And granted, some of those games are so far behind, they deserve updates and they deserve work. But MX Bikes is his bread maker right now.
Oh, yeah. It would almost be a good idea to have MX Bikes at whatever level it's able to be at, and then have the other games kind of on a level playing field with each other. Like, if he was making disgusting money from another one of his games, sure, let that catch up to Bikes, or MXB. Because I guess if we're talking about Bobo's games, just
Yeah, there's
Bikes,
GP Bikes
there's
and
two.
MX Bikes.
Yeah.
It's really weird because all of his games could be incorporated into one universal hub game, and that would be incredible. You know, it's just you get different sets of physics whether you decide to ride a street bike or a dirt bike or a cart or a car or whatever, but it's all the same engine that it's built on. It's all like 80% the same features, the same functions.
So when you
It's just
say
little.
it's
What?
all been built into one hub, are you kind of talking like with what Battlefield did, to where you could go inside the Battlefield hub, and then from there you could choose either like Battlefield 4, 5, Hardline, whatever? Or do you mean
No,
like,
like if it was just one game,
and then
basically.
like you would
Because
play
if
in servers together, like someone would have a
like you
CRF
could have,
250 and someone else would have an R1
yeah, basically.
on the
Like
same track?
the games are all so similar. There's if you just look at the individual files, there's so much carryover. It would make sense to have it all into one ecosystem rather than four separate games that get his attention split between them all.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's a fair point. But
And
I
then
mean,
if it was all built into one, then he could update the carts or the cars or whatever, and just update the general game at one discipline at a time, and it would still have benefits that carry over.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, I don't know that much about code and building game engines whatsoever, but I imagine if he was to do something with the code, I'm getting a little bit of voice feedback from your end.
Oh, well, I do have a cat laying on my headphone cable, so. What's up, Ginger?
Um, but yeah, I don't know anything about like game coding or anything like that, but I would imagine if he was to make would it be just a line of code or a few lines of
I
code to, update a game? I feel like if they are the same engine, which obviously they are, he'd be able to copy and paste to the other games, but I mean, I
You
could be
would think,
super
but
wrong.
you would think since they're all based around the same architecture that you update one and it wouldn't be that hard to carry the changes over to the other games. But then you see devlog and he's preparing WRP for an update for 3 months. It's like didn't you already do all of that hard work updating MX bikes last year?
Yeah.
Like, just how far behind are these things?
Yeah, and I wish, I mean, I at least wish GP Bikes was a little bit more updated, because I would love to play that game online and, like, actually get some decent lobbies in and some good races, because the game is super fun, depending on what bike you have, because that's another one to where there's so many different bikes, but so many of them are just god-awful. Like,
Yeah.
like I downloaded the Super Nakeds pack. It's got the Super Duke, the Z1000, a couple other ones. I downloaded it because I've got a Super Duke in real life, so I'm like,
Oh,
oh
dude.
cool, my IRL bike. So I'm gonna go ride that. But that bike is so broken, and there's never any servers up. I mean, any given time there'd probably be a total of 10 servers, period.
Yeah.
And like 3 of them would be on the stock track with the stock bike, and probably 10 people each. And then the other ones, it'll be some random track that, has next to no downloads on some weird bike you've never heard of. It's just all, like, there's no way for it to work in the state that game's in right now.
Yeah, it's just sad, really.
Yeah. But I'm glad that MX Bikes is able to come around, and we've been able to get a good central hub of 1 and now 2 bike packs. And everyone, for the most part, can pretty much play together. I know there's some, dweebs and nerds that still can't figure out the whole tire thing and keep getting bike mismatch or track mismatch. And
Yeah, it never stops.
yeah, I don't think it ever will, unless unless it's a lobby on Forest with MSMs, I don't think there will ever not be bike mismatch, track mismatch.
Yeah, pretty much.
Because I don't know how good you were when you first got the game, but even when Tristan, my buddy, was trying to teach me how to download tracks and download the bike. I mean, the bikes are the worst. It was hard enough learning how to import tracks into the game, but when I had to do tires and bikes and folders and skins, I had no idea what was going on.
I mean,
So-
when I first started, it wasn't that bad because it was only bikes and it was only tracks. So you had so much less that you had to mess with. But now there is so much that you can get that can just confuse the game.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, and I'm good with keeping it simple at this point. I've tried some like menu pictures and, changing the actual fabric of the game. And I don't know. I kind of just like keeping it plain, keeping the, stock background or like stock garage or whatever it is in the menu. Keeping the same stock sounds.
I've got a different background screen. I've got loading screens. I've got different sounds. I've got the impact sound mod. I am definitely far from the base game.
Yeah.
I've got 3 different folders of tires, and I've got 3 different folders of bikes.
Yep, and I've still kept the old OEMs around for I think 3 years now.
Yeah, I have a folder that's just old OEMs and enduro bikes.
Cause like
And Supermoto.
from the first OEM pack that I played with, I had so many skins. Like so many of them were custom made either by me or my friends.
Yeah.
Where like realistically, I will most likely never play with them again. I mean, for obvious reasons. But I also don't have the heart to get rid of them.
Don't cut your losses so soon. Eventually, the plan is to have, the current OEM bikes, the 4-strokes, the 2-strokes, electric, the classic bikes like the old Honda and RM.
Ooh.
The enduro, the Supermoto, all of the things that we've come to know and expect from bikes eventually will be updated and brought back into the game. And somewhere between the next OEM update, my death, and the eventual heat death of the universe, there will be a rebuilding of those old OEM bikes. The Beta 16 bikes, the Beta 9 bikes, under the current OEM ideology or future vision of whatever. A modernizing of the old OEM pack bikes, which would bring back all those old models and all those old skins.
Yeah, that'd be sick. Yeah, that would. That's a large project for sure. It's hard to wrap my mind around that.
Yeah, one day.
One day, we can hope. But I think that's probably good. You cool calling it there?
Yeah, I think that'll work.
Put in about
Got
an
a
hour
solid.
and a half.
Yeah.
Yeah, went 3 times over what we were originally expecting. But yeah, I'm super happy with how it turned out.
Hell yeah.
And now
30 minutes.
Now I just need a name for this stupid thing.
I don't even know, man.
I've thought of so many different like funny-ish names. Like I've thought of like the Pabobo Wonk podcast, and I'm like, no, that just sounds stupid. And then I've thought of the the Bike Mismatch podcast, and I'm like, no, that also sounds stupid. So, yeah, I don't know. I'm sure it'll come to me. And when I put this out, I'll probably just put it out as MX Bikes Podcast Episode 1. And then if I do come up with a title, I'll just edit and change it. But, yeah, I think that's where we're at right now.
There you go. The Mike Mismatch podcast.
Easy.
Man,
right.
I'm looking through my tracks right now, and Hill Valley is the one that I was talking about. I can't tell you how many laps I put on Hill Valley.
Yes. Wait, the original or Hill Valley 2?
Just Hill Valley MX.
Or am I thinking of the right one that had 2 versions?
I don't think this one did.
I don't know. I'm probably thinking of something else. We'll sesh after this, and then it'll come to me. I'll see it. But all right, thank you for joining me on the podcast and being the guinea pig for episode 1.
Oh, let's go. Anytime.
Hell yeah, brother. All right, anything else you want to close with?
No, I can't think of anything.
Word. Hell yeah. All right. Well, I think that'll do it.